Hello and welcome. I'm Lee Peterson. I'm the host of the podcast WDcast, which is called WDcast because it's brought to you by WD Partners, whose tagline is Innovation at Scale, which means WD has services that range from strategy, design, digital, operations to architecture and construction management, end to end, in other words, and they're at WDpartners.com. Thanks, WD, for sponsoring the show. And a second about the mission of this show. On WDcast, we want to talk about the burning business platforms of the 21st century and the challenges that are involved. So we're not necessarily concerned about what the business is as long as it's on fire. And there's obviously, at least in my opinion, a lot to talk about and a lot to talk about for a long time. Today, we're going to talk about the latest and greatest in retail, which means all the gooey stuff like store closings, empty malls, failed legacy brands, and of course the 900-pound gorilla, Amazon. And I have with me via phone someone who has spent years reporting on retail and other topics, as well as critiquing theater and being an ace photographer, Daphne Howland. Daphne is currently an experienced writer and reporter who now writes for Retail Dive out of Washington, D.C. She's out of Portland, Maine, and full disclosure, has been somewhat of a soulmate of mine these last couple of years in terms of commiserating on the super liquid state of retail. So Daphne, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Lee. Thank you very much. Looking forward to another discussion with you. You've been very helpful to me over the past few years, trying to get a handle on this market.
Yeah, well, always willing to bloviate, as you know.
It's very helpful.
Okay. Disclaimer before we get going, the thoughts and opinions expressed today belong to the members of this discussion and do not necessarily represent those of the companies that they work for, which right now is Retail Dive and WD Partners. Okay, Daphne, before we get going, I've asked you this before, but I thought it was a pretty cool story. I think it was one of the first things I ever asked you. Tell us how you got that retro cool name, Daphne.
Well, it's a little silly. My parents spoke Spanish in the house. My dad was from Spain. My mother's American. And we lived in Barcelona till I was about 5. And
oh, wow.
They were, yeah. I don't know if this is the story you're talking about.
I forgot that part.
Yeah. They wanted a name that would be the same in any language. So not Mary, Maria, but just Daphne, which was a little silly because my dad pronounced it his way and everyone else pronounced it their way. And it was different anyway, but that's how I got it, yeah.
Wow. So do you remember Barcelona as a kid?
I remember the kind of weird things that you remember as a kid, like how the apartment was. I remember living in an apartment, which I didn't once we moved back to the States, but not Barcelona itself, no.
Not like leaving like a cadre of friends behind?
Not really. I do remember getting really mad at my preschool because the kid wrecked my Tom and Jerry toy.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a kid. I grew up in Chicago, and I had a kid steal my fire engine ladder, and I ran across the street and got hit by a car. But it wasn't in Barcelona anyway.
Well, those are the things you remember.
Yeah. Okay, so your background and experience as a writer is truly extensive, and you've done a ton of other things like theater critic and photographer. Could you tell us about the road that you've chosen? Like, how'd you get here? What's your story to be such a prolific writer?
Well, it's, for 25 years or something, I was a freelancer and I refused to specialize. The writing community, freelance journalism, people were saying you have to specialize, you have to have your own brand. I didn't really want to. I liked doing different things, writing for different publications. it was really only recently. Retail dive used to be one of my jobs, but increasingly was taking up more of my time as a lot of my other gigs kind of went away because journalism is a tough business right now, and it just started to make more sense for me to go on staff, and it's turned out to be not just a smart thing, but really fun to work with a team so closely, be on staff,
Um,
and
you're
yeah.
also really good at what you do, I think, which helps. I think you changed retail dive a lot, but speaking of them, I think they've grown a lot these last couple of years in size and also in quality. Talk about your role there. Like, what exactly do you do for them?
Really, it's that basic, very basic thing, which is reporting. I mean, reporting is a skill more than anything. There's, like any job, there's an art and a skill to it. But it's really talking to people who know what's going on in a given business segment, getting good sources, and then trying to give the audience a picture of what's going on. And when it comes to retail, I mean, it's just all over the place.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Well, even the fact that I've seen developers talking about there's no retail apocalypse, and even though stores are closing like crazy, I've seen reports from developers saying that's not really happening. So it would depend on who you interview, I guess.
So that's the challenge, I think. It's a little bit that whole describing the elephant, talking to people, the leg experts versus the trunk experts, and trying to get a picture of the entire thing. But retail is retailers, and there are all kinds of retailers doing different, at different spots in their evolution at a time when it's just really in flux.
Yeah. Speaking of that, and I alluded to it, but the retail apocalypse, since we're talking about the elephant,
Yeah.
what do you think of that? I mean, everybody has an opinion about it, obviously, like we're talking about developers, but what do you think? Because that's all you do that's the majority of what you do anyway, is talk to retailers.
I mean, it sounds to me like the e-commerce has definitely, hit this business in a big way. But in a lot of ways, it seems to be overplayed because there were so many other things that happened 20 years ago that is affecting retail now. Things like building way too many malls, opening way too many stores.
Yeah.
And so when you're correcting for monumental things like that, at the same time that e-commerce is coming in, it's easy to lose sight of some simple corrections that probably would have had to happen whether e-commerce arrived or not.
Well, I think you're really right about that. Sooner or later, the malls would start to eat each other. I think they kind of did sort of the beginning of the century. A lot of stores like the D and when I worked for Limited, we had D and E stores even. These were small volume stores in towns like Springfield, Illinois. They started to be cannibalized by stores that were nearby, like in St. Louis or something like that. People would almost rather go to a higher end mall. So it started to happen before e-commerce.
And then there's this thing of the mall seemed like such a brilliant idea in the 80s. And that whole Robert Moses shift away from downtown. I mean, I think a lot of people are back downtown. It's such a natural, nice place to shop. And so it's funny to me how many stores, when they send you their images, will send you a picture of their downtown location in some city when most of their stores are in malls. So you know.
Yeah, like J.C. Penney. Like J.C. Penney used to be, one of the stores in line in downtown, whatever the small town was. That's where J.C. Penney was, or Sears, especially. And not that they took the Walmart approach and went out to the country and built huge boxes, but they were in the town of like Chillicothe, Ohio, and there would always be a Sears there, or a Penny's, or a Woolworths, or something like that. And with the mall coming in, that was kind of the end of a lot of downtowns. But I think you're right in that we call it the third wave of retail, where we went through. It started with Ma and Pa. We went through this whole mall thing, and just like a retail bubble actually is what it was. But now it's back to a really cool coffee shop, a small guy that sells apparel, a record store, of all things. You agree with that?
I think so. I mean, here in Portland, Maine, we have, I don't know, 3 solid, well-performing, as far as I can tell, independent bookstores. And the record store, which is still thriving, also sells books. I mean, to me, talking about a business where your goods are not differentiated from Amazon, selling at full price for the most part, it's such a lesson in, how a retailer can do well downtown in a segment that Amazon still dominates in a big way.
Yeah. So kind of back to the malls, do you think, what's your take on what's going to happen? Are we going to wind up with like 100 of them, or, out of the 11,000 or whatever it was, I think at the turn of the century?
Yeah, I wish I had looked up a number like that, because the developer people that I talk to have they see doom, I would say, for the lesser mall, for sure.
Yeah.
A malls, and that's it.
Yeah, I had a reporter from Springfield, Ohio call me not too long ago, and he said, well, the Sears went out, the Penny's went out, all the anchors went out of our little mall. What do you think's going to happen? And I was like, well, what do you think's going to happen? It's only a matter of time, I think, when the specialty guys do the same thing, really just downsize. And part of that is that their e-commerce is growing like 25% every year as well. Like, what was Target's number last quarter? Or was it Walmart? 41%?
Yeah.
The year before?
Insane.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, malls are trying to add things like doctor's offices and bowling alleys and stuff, which I don't really have a handle on whether those kinds of things are going to mean that people then go in and buy clothes from stores. So
right, I had a reporter call me from Akron Beacon Journal or something like that, and he said, we just found out that Amazon bought this old mall. That's like an old semi-vacant mall. There were still a few stores in there, like local stores in there. And he said, do you think it's going to be like all Amazon stores? I'm like, no. That's going to be a database center, dude. or distribution center
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of Amazon, I know you can't go too far on this, but I did give a disclaimer at the beginning. What do you think? Are they the evil monster or game changer, or what's your take on those guys?
Both. Amazon is, we're studying Amazon. Everyone's studying Amazon. Everyone's trying to figure them out. My big question with Amazon is how far are they going to take their marketplace? Because as a customer, which is not the same thing as a reporter, because it's a completely unscientific, analysis. But as a customer, I'm a Prime member. There's their streaming service, which keeps me there for sure as a Prime member. But I'm finding the proliferation of sellers on their site to be a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
I can't really get a sense of some of those private brands. And sometimes I just give up and think, I'll buy these socks. You know, you can almost just pick them up the next time you're at Target type of thing, you know, or Walmart, because you can end up with buying something where it might have been a little cheaper, but maybe not quality-wise quite the value that you thought it should be. So I'm interested in knowing how, you know, they're at 58% of goods sold there is through their marketplace. How far is that going to go?
Yeah.
75?
Yeah.
90?
Yeah.
And then what does that do for their own brand proposition, which is, you know, basically trust?
Right. Oh, and efficiency, right? So if they start to get you a pair of socks and you go to put them on and they're like baby socks, you know,
Yeah.
and I think at this point in time, almost everybody has some kind of experience with the Amazon Marketplace of getting the wrong thing or doing whatever. We actually had two incidents now where, you know, we got shipped either the wrong thing or wasn't what we expected, or et cetera, and we wrote them back or called them, and they said, "Oh, just keep it," because it wasn't worth shipping back and them trying to sell it again. They just said, "Forget about it," which is, you know, something that I don't think any other retailer would actually do. But
Well, yeah, they don't. Most retailers don't have the kind of cushion that Amazon has, as far as, you know, a whole nother line of unrelated business.
yeah, just a crazy volume.
Yeah.
So a total kind of opposite on that, department stores, which are related to malls, but kind of not really. I mean, I've never really been a fan of theirs, as you know, but do you see them being relevant going forward? I just saw an article that said that Macy's earnings were going to be zero or something like that, where the percentage of increase was zero. And so they were sort of low on the totem pole of all retailers' earnings. Do you think those guys are going to hang around very much longer? Are they on the cusp of the wave as well?
So I have a source who is adamant, and he's been saying this to me for a couple of years now, that Macy's is going to be basically a bi-coastal retailer. Maybe, you know, San Francisco and New York, they're big, top-notch flagships, but that they have way more downsizing to do than the 100 stores they've closed in the past couple of years. Macy's has told me, nope, they're done. They're fixing up these 150 stores. The thing about, for me, department stores is I want them to be relevant. I have this misplaced nostalgia for department stores that I think is just based on movies and the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and things like that, where they just seemed like such an awesome place to shop. Just fun, downtown, beautiful buildings, super helpful customer service.
Miracle on 34th Street, like that?
Yeah, like that. Lovely pair of leather gloves that you can't really get anywhere else. And I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
And, you know, you were the one who really painted the picture for me of how Macy's bought up all these local department stores and kind of sucked the local differentiation out of each one, turned them into a Macy's, centralized the buying, all the efficient things just really destroyed that local appeal. And even if they were to recognize how important localization might be, I mean, do you think they could ever return to that?
It's hard to say. There's some new ideas about department stores, I think, that are starting up, like show fields in New York, where basically they have anybody that's selling anything online, including Amazon's marketplace, whatever, is allowed to kind of showcase their products there. I think that's an interesting idea. Where I could go there and basically like shopping the web, or I saw so and so on the web, and oh, by the way, they're at show fields as well, and I could go see that. That's interesting. But to get to the scale that they were before, like what I was talking to you about was Lazarus. I had a really intimate experience with Lazarus, and I used to travel with their buyers back and forth to New York City when they went there for Fashion Week. And there was 3, I think, Lazarus stores, but just like you're saying, there was this huge department store downtown that everybody would go to for sure at Christmas and other times, and it was like 6 or 7 stories, kind of like Macy's 34th Street, and that went away. So yeah, I think that there's going to be like a new type of department store, but the old model, just like a lot of old retail, I think is going to dissipate and go down the drain super, super slow. I'm always amazed by how long it's taken people to buy 100% of their things online, or, like 90% of their things online, and occasionally pick something up from a store. Because I felt that way like in 1997. And we're still not there. We're still like, for most retailers, if you look at the numbers of people that buy things online, I think it's just over 20% if you take out gasoline in restaurants and automobile sales. It's just over 20%. So we're still, 75, 80% of things bought in stores, which is astounding. So I don't think anything, like the demise of department stores or malls or that type of thing, I don't think any of that is going to go rapid fire. It's going to take a while.
The thing that's interesting to me about department stores, and I say the nostalgia is misplaced because I didn't really ever experience this, but it sounds like they were really tied to their local culture. And recently, an example of an attempt at that I saw at the Nordstrom New York City store, which is brand new. And Nordstrom, which loves its footwear because that's how they started out.
Yeah.
For this store, asked us a number of designers, footwear designers, to choose a muse, a New York City based woman from any era as an inspiration for a design that would be special to that store. And that's the kind of cultural, tie that, to me, that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And and it could be done in any town. It could be done in Columbus, Ohio, New York City, Portland, Maine. I mean, that it's what you're talking about is really kind of connecting with the neighborhood. And there's a lot of terms for that, localization, but really it's for your customers, the people that actually come to your site.
Yeah, and suddenly you're talking about something that's really special and meaningful.
Yeah. Okay, I know it's a broad topic, but what do you think about AI? I know you must have spoken to 20 people at least recently about AI, and somebody has said something about AI that you might have been confused about. What do you think about that?
So AI, there's so many arguments about AI, and the top thing, and I think this is going to be especially a concern for our kids, the Gen Zers, who, by the way, I think are well aware of it, which is, the effectiveness and the concerns about AI are the same, which is that the inputs matter for, the results to be relevant and useful. But ultimately, it's about getting to know the customer. It's information about the customer, which retailers have always wanted to do, right? I mean, that's always been important. And AI does, it takes in and processes information in a way that human beings simply can't. But I think, and this is the kind of question that people like you need to answer, which is, what are the pieces that humans still do better than computers? And how do you make sure that you have the humans there to make those calls?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And was it Henry Ford that said, if I if I would ask my customers, or in this case, if I would ask the data about the customers what they wanted, Henry Ford said, I would have had it would have been faster horses. And Steve Jobs
right.
said something along those lines as well. But the thing is, I think you're still going to need people that just like look at that brand Supreme in New York City. I mean, those guys they've been shooting from the hip, for 15 years, and now their latest valuation was over $1 billion. But they kind of don't care what anybody says or what any trend is. They're just doing what they think is right. But that type of sense that only humans have, I don't think machines are ever going to be able to develop that. So I think I had somebody say to me the other day, we were talking about AI, and I said I don't know what the issue is, because computers are AI. They're artificial intelligence. You ask, they'll calculate something for you, or they'll write something down for you, or, you can talk to it and it'll dial for you, those types of things. So if you ask me, I think it's probably a little bit of both. But I think you are absolutely correct. And we're going to, sooner or later here, I think we're going to either come up against something or, indulge in something and go, all right, that's enough. And, the humans are going to, in terms of taste level and privacy and things like that, I think are going to come through. They're going to be victorious at the end of the day. Just like the movie Terminator.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope. That's another thing on our kids' plate. They've got to save the planet and make sure that AI doesn't destroy us.
Yeah, like we care. So, how about a bold prediction for 2020? What do you think's going to happen this coming year?
This is
something big.
I mean, this is definitely where I feel the reporter hat very tightly, because this is the kind of question I have for my sources. I'm definitely seeing recession. I'm seeing comments like, not necessarily a recession, but downturn in consumer confidence. And I think that's going to show up in just people looking for, a few years ago when we kept saying, or at least I kept writing about how everyone was really sensitive to deals and wanted price cuts and promotions. And I think we're going to go back to that, probably, is my guess, whether or not there's a recession.
Yeah. Big election year too. And you kind of never know what's going to happen with that when our presidential elections, and nowadays, 40% of the people are going to be upset no matter what happens. So
yeah,
that doesn't help,
And I've noticed that people who analyze consumer confidence will mention election years as being sort of putting a damper on things. And I think that impeachment hearings are probably speeding that up, or maybe elongating that period where there's just a sense of disquiet and turmoil.
Yeah, it seems like you almost get the feeling like nobody was alive or something, when Clinton went through it. But I remember thinking then, like, come on, for what he did or whatever. I don't think that now, but still, where it's going. I mean, the outcome is super predictable. So, and I don't know. At one point in time, I think you have to ask yourself, like, how far do you want to go with your democratic integrity? You're going to take it to the wall to the point where the 40% that are upset with the whole thing turns to 50, or 60, something like that.
Right now, I don't know about you, but right now, with the impeachment hearings being on television, I'm getting a flashback to when I was a little kid and the Watergate hearings were on. And my mother always had on the little black and white TV that she kept in the kitchen. She had them on during the day. And with the neighbor, she would catch up. They would gossip about Watergate and Mary Hartman, and it would be like, oh, did you see Mary Hartman? Oh yeah, and did you see Watergate? So I thought Watergate was a soap opera, and I'm getting that same, kind of vibe that just putting it on TV, it's dry. Yeah. I think. As it's going on for hours and hours, but the upshot, it has this dramatic soap opera-y kind of feel.
Yeah, and the other thing, and I don't remember if this was the case then or for Clinton. Everybody knows what they're going to do in November. We already know. When you walk into the voter booth, you know what you're going to do. I'm kind of the way. I don't care what happens. I walk into that voter booth, I'm doing what I'm going to do. Okay, so anything else you'd like to add before we go to our infamous lightning round? Any other tips for reporters? I thought the one that you had was really good.
Tips for reporters, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, whenever anyone says they like one of my stories, it's all about talking to the right people, which above all means people who know what they're talking about, but also people like you who have a little, shall we say, flair when they talk. Very helpful to the flow and tenor of a story when you have someone who can express themselves, in a colorful way.
Okay, so you ready for the lightning round?
I'm ready.
All right. I want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind when I ask you about something.
Yep. Ready.
Okay, boomer.
Prince.
Prince,
because to me, I love the whole okay boomer thing. As Gen X, I think I've been rolling my eyes at boomers for years and years and years. And so this just gives me two words to put to that feeling. But the boomer obsession with the Beatles is just so annoying. And I have never had an outlet to say the Beatles are not the only band or even the best, greatest band ever to stride the earth. And Prince, if anyone, probably is.
There you go. You know what's funny about this? So I'm a boomer, and the Beatles were never my favorite. And one of the reasons why was because my sister was insane about them. I mean, she would be one of those screaming girls, screaming young girls. She was one of those, and I was like, And a Rolling Stones came along, and I'm like, yeah, that's more like it, or somebody like that. That's so funny. But Prince, I saw him live a few times, and he was just, like, amazing. And what I never realized, and people don't realize, he was one of the most amazing guitar players I think I've ever seen. A couple of those first, I don't know why I'm ranting on this, but a couple of those first albums that he did them all himself. He played all the instruments. Yeah.
I mean, just an absolute genius and put on a great show. And yet the Beatles.
Okay. Next one. You ready? What's your favorite city?
I'm going to say Rome.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a tough one though. I love cities.
Yeah.
Chicago, San Francisco,
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. I think for me it's Oslo. I just great city, like kind of incredible, actually. And it's the type of place, unlike Rome, where if I told people to go there, they would never go. Nobody's going to Oslo.
Well, and I haven't ever been to Oslo, but that's the problem with this question, which is how do you you need to go
Right.
to know.
Yeah. Okay. Next one is Bezos.
Please don't run for president.
Oh. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, next one. Amazon v. Walmart. Who wins?
Target. I'm just kidding. I'm actually just kidding, but because the real answer I think is Walmart, but Target seems to be slipping into the cracks that those two are leaving open. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and they're the job they did with private label, the insight to start private label, 20 some years ago, that was a good move, as it turns out. With everything going DTC, direct to consumer, to have your own label, nobody else has it. Simple as that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you are addicted to...
This one's easy. Coffee.
Oh, God. Yeah, don't get me going on that. I know. And the problem is you feel just as crappy as you do good, right?
No. No. I mean, I own any element of my productivity, maybe even my personality, I owe to coffee. Strong coffee. I don't drink it all day long, just nice and strong with a decent amount of half and half, and I'm good to go. I know. I feel fantastic.
We might have talked about this before, but I think my whole third career, which has been, I don't know, like the past 15 to 20 years in retail consulting, was based on coffee. Like I think I would have been done had it not been for coffee. I was exhausted by retail.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Caribou's started opening in town, and then Starbucks. And next thing you know, I'm walking around with those Traint days and Vaint days and, just happy to be working past 7. It's like not a problem.
Well, and the breakthrough when that Starbucks and those early players actually introduced good tasting coffee.
Right. Yeah. God.
It's just a nice way to start the day. It just is.
I feel that way now about pour over stuff. There's a operator here called Fox in the Snow, and they do pour over coffee. And you taste that and you think, just the way when you first tasted Starbucks and you thought, what was that crap I've been drinking all my life?
Yeah.
Okay, Daphne, you've been super gracious and entertaining too. So much appreciated. Thank you very much for taking the time with us.
This is fun, as always, Lee. I really appreciate it.
Okay. People, be sure and listen anytime for some more human interaction on hot topics, which, by the way, you are welcome to suggest. I'm at lee.peterson@wdpartners.com. Also, be sure and subscribe to this podcast. WDcast is at wdpartners.com. You go to the menu hamburger and hit What We Think. Then go to the very bottom of that page, bottom's kind of center right, and hit the podcast icon and then pick one. And we've got a bunch in there. Google, Lioness, EY, Fitch, Alexa. We even talked to Alexa a little bit, which was a little frustrating, but AI, right? So thanks for listening. Stay frosty out there, and we'll talk to you next time.